Green. All right, Stacy, you see just the screen and not my notes? She's nodding. All right, so we're going to get started. There's the flyer that you've seen for a while at the gym. Thanks for joining me. So our January Healthy Habits Talk is sponsored by MJ Hair Studio and Skin Lab in Bay Village. All of you know Coach Cat, most of you know Coach Cat at the gym, and she works at that salon. And she got her boss to donate it's a facial treatment of some sort. I believe it has a value of about $130. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But because you're registered for this call, you'll be in the drawing, and one of you lucky folks is going to win that. And so if you're like me or Jay or maybe Bob and you're not in the market for a facial, somebody in your life will be. So they'll be really happy that you were here. So today we're going to talk about last month, or the last time I did a talk, I did it about salmon and fish. And a lot of people just don't like fish, so they didn't come on. This time I'm getting to the meat. We're going to talk about a couple of my favorite ways to prepare steak and pork ribs, and not just on a grill, but in your kitchen as well. And maybe a method you might be surprised at. We're going to do it in an oven and in a sous vide method, so there's no grill needed. The prep work is pretty much the same for all three methods. It's just the cooking that differs. So I'm going to go through and we're going to start with the steak. And I'm going to show you how I reverse sear a steak. If you're on Facebook and you see my postings, I often post pictures of steaks that I cook because I'm so proud of how great they turn out. So a lot of people are confused at how to do it. So I'm just going to show you how I do it. Reverse searing means it's backwards. The old-fashioned way, and what I was always taught when I was growing up, is you get a pan really hot and you sear the steak on both sides to attempt to supposedly trap the juices in, and then you cook it slower up to temperature. So reverse sear is the opposite. You're going to cook it low and slow up to a temperature, and then you're going to put it on that hot pan and sear the crap out of it right at the end. And I think it's a much better method. It's much easier to have it come out perfect. So let's start with the steak. First of all, let's be clear. I started the last nutrition talk about this. I'm not a chef. I'm not even a cook for that matter. I'm just a guy who's learned how to cook certain things really well. And so I'm just going to share with you what I do. I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I'm not going to tell you what the best way is and why. I'm just going to show you what I've done. And then I built in some stops throughout after each kind of segment if you have any questions on what I cover. But feel free to interrupt anytime you want. It's casual, and we're all friends here. Oops. We'll hit the button. So we're going to start out with, hold on. Hit the wrong button. There we go. So we're going to start out with my favorite cut of steak, the ribeye. I cook ribeyes more than anything else. I'll get a strip steak once in a while, but ribeye is my favorite. This is a USDA choice cut. It's a certified Angus beef. Personally, I don't really know if that means all that much, but I buy it. It looks better. When I can, I prefer to buy USDA prime, but oftentimes I'll find a USDA choice cut that looks really good. I just look for the marbling, just see how well that fat is spread evenly through the meat. I don't have a favorite place to get steak, and so maybe at the end, if any of you have a place that we might not know about, but I typically get them at Costco or Heinen's. Not that much of a snob about where I get my steak like I am about fresh seafood. So the first step when I do a steak, and we're going to do this, I'm going to do it on the grill, in a smoker. I'm going to do it in the oven, and I'm going to do it sous vide. But the prep is identical to get to that point. So the first step, I use a Jacquard meat tenderizer. If you look at that, there's 48 stainless steel blades, and it slices in. It's like the old-fashioned way people take a fork and jab it into their steak, which is, from what I've heard, a bad idea. Puts too big of holes in the steak. But that Jacquard, it just slices really thin. You sit there and just kind of, I have it here. Hold on, I got some stuff. So as I go through, I'm going to show you some of these things. It's got 48, 3 rows. Ooh, why do I have a echo? Somebody got a, you hearing that echo?
Yeah, sorry about that, Bill. I
Oh,
got that. Okay.
better? That's what happens when I have two devices on, or if Stacy's near me. All right, I'll back up. But your card, it's got, you can see it. There's 3 rows of 16 little sharp blades. Do not put this in your finger. It hurts like hell. And you just sit there and just stomp it. It just makes all these little cuts. So I would do, sorry, you can't see that. But that on one side, so it's going to put up hundreds of holes in it, and I'll flip it over and I'll do the other side. And so what that'll do is it'll flatten that steak out a little bit because you're pressing on it. So then I take and I just kind of smush it back, and now it looks, now, sorry, the picture I have here, this is a strip steak that I cooked the other day, but I'm just going to squish it back so that's the same size as it was out of the package. And then I'm going to dry brine. So dry brine with kosher salt. And so I'll take a reasonable, don't be bashful on putting the salt on. I put a pretty thick layer on. And what that does is I'll take that. I got some feedback coming again. Anybody? Jamie, is that you again?
I turned off all volume.
Okay. It's weird. I've never had that happen before. Okay. So I'll take that steak and I'll put it back in the fridge for an hour or two. And what happens is that salt it sucks the moisture out of the steak, and then the salt dissolves into that moisture, and then it gets sucked back in. So I've just always done it. The better chefs that I follow always say that's the simplest way to make a steak. It's going to make it more tender and juicier, they say. So it's just one of those things I always do. If it's about an inch thick or a little less, I just dry brine one side, an hour minimum, maybe 2. People can tell you can leave it in the fridge overnight, that there's no too long, but it's not necessary. If it's a thicker steak, every once in a while, you'll get one of those, 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches. I'll do an hour and a half to 2 hours on each side. Some people say to put it on like a Bradley rack or like a drying rack like this, so you can have a little more air on both sides. So if you're short on time and you have thick steak, just put the salt on both sides and have air be able to get on each side, and do that for a couple hours. So after it's been dry brine, that's when I'll put some seasoning on it. Sometimes I just put it right on the grill without anything, but this steak I put onion powder, garlic powder, and some ground white pepper. I could black pepper, anything that you choose. That's your choice. So now I'm going to take that. So this way, that prep is good for all 3 methods I'm going to go over. And I'm going to go fairly quick because I want to have you have more time with questions. If something doesn't interest you, I don't want to bore you. But this is what I'm going to do no matter how I'm going to cook the steak. So that's why I've got the screen. Any questions on the prep so far? And feel free to ask.
Hey, Bill, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you trim off like the big pieces of fat, or do you leave them on?
I usually leave them on. I don't usually have a lot. I mean, every once in a while you'll get a steak with a really big fat lump in one corner. I might trim it, but it's not like needing, if I'm doing a brisket or a pork tenderloin or something, sometimes I'll cut that fat cap off, but steaks, I typically don't.
What's the difference?
Go ahead.
Sorry. What's the difference between white pepper and black pepper?
The color.
Okay.
Yeah, I think years ago, not a handful of years ago, I had a food sensitivity test done. The Kempers that are at our gym,
Right.
They're functional medicine people, and they did this test, and it came back that black pepper was something that kicked off something in my immune system that wasn't as good, but white pepper didn't. So Stacy started buying white pepper, but I don't eat enough of it to matter. So there's from a nutrition standpoint, I don't think there's any difference, but from how your body might react to it, there's something.
because my Kemper thing showed that black pepper was one that I should avoid.
Oh, you had the same test as I did.
Yep.
Yeah, so I did. That test, not to go down any rabbit holes, but it also put avocados on my red list. I only had 3 foods, I believe, that were in the red. I had a lot of yellows. In avocados, so I avoided avocados for the last few years. I just started eating them about 3 weeks ago. It's like, you know what? I think that was a false positive or a false negative, or however you look at it. Anyway, if you're concerned about it, Bob, get white pepper. It tastes the same. It's a little bit finer. I haven't found white peppercorns to be able to put in a grinder to get thicker, but it tastes the same to me. And if you
It's
get
harder to find.
if you get too much of it, it makes you sneeze just like black pepper.
It is harder to find.
Is it? Okay. All right. I'm just going to give one quick, I got a note here just to give a quick word to our sponsor. Again, it's MJ. The facial treatment by MJ Hair and Skin Lab in Bay Village. Again, we're going to draw a name at after this, and hopefully you win. Going to move along. So now we're going to do the first cook is going to be on a grill or a smoker at 225. I use a Traeger pellet grill, and it's referred to as a smoker, but for hardcore grill people, it's not really a smoker. It's a wood burning oven that you can control temperature very well, but you don't get a really big smoke taste from it, or at least I don't. Jay, you have a Traeger, don't you? Or are you a smoker? Real.
No, it's a pellet fed.
Okay.
It's a Pit Boss, but it's like a Traeger.
Gotcha. They're good. You could definitely tell it was cooked on wood, but it's not a real side bin smoker. So this is what the ribeye is going to look like after I've seasoned it, before it's going to go on. And I'm going to put it on the grate, and you'll see this is an old temperature probe that I had. I've got a new one that's much nicer and better. It's by ThermoWorks. It's a smoke, and it has 2 probes. It's got one, there's a clip that I'll put in to be able to monitor the temperature of the inside of the grill, because even if you have a thermometer mounted in your lid, or the Traegers or the Pit Bosses, they have a thermometer saying this is what I set it at, and there's a probe inside, and they tell you that that's what the air temperature is, but mine is not accurate. What my Traeger says and what this says is completely different, and I trust this. The little clip, it goes right, I can put it anywhere, so I don't lay this on the grate, because that'll change the reading, because it's leaning up against hot metal. So it just kind of floats in there. And then I take the probe and stick it in the meat and close it up. I cook it at between 185 and 225. And it really depends on what, if I'm in a hurry. It takes, if I put it at 185, it might take 90 minutes for it to get up to temperature. And I pull it, because I like medium rare steak. So I pull it at a temperature of 117 or 118. The picture there shows that I have that set at 128. And that's what I did in the early days, because I would take the steak right off the grill and I would put it on my hot pan. But I'm going to show you that the nice thing about reverse searing is it takes the timing issues away. You don't have to be in a hurry to go from the grill right to your hot pan. And so if you are going to let it rest or sit for any period of time, if I take it off at 128, it continues to cook. And by the time I go to put it on the sear pan, it's almost overcooked. So I pull at 117 or 118. That's one of those things you experiment with. There's no right or wrong, but I wouldn't pull it at 105 or 110, because then I have to spend too much time cooking it on the hot grill pan. So this is what it's going to look like. That's what it'll look like at about a 117 or 118 internal temperature. Now, if you don't have a constant monitoring device like this, well, either whether you do or not, I'd recommend that you have some type of fast acting temperature probe. The best one I've ever used, and this was recommended to me by several of our members, it's a ThermoWorks. This is a thermal TheraPen. or TheraPen 1. It comes up to temperature within a second and a half of when you stick it in. A lot of the lower priced pens, temperature gauges, or even this smoke, this constant monitor, if I brought this probe out and stuck it in, it might take 30 seconds to come up and register the exact temperature. So the things that are monitoring on an ongoing basis don't have to be that fast acting, but this type of stuff does. So it's worth the money to spend to have that, no matter what you're cooking. So that's what it looks like when it comes off the grill. And I show that a close-up because I want you to realize that if you do this, it's not really that appealing. When you pull it off, sometimes it's a little brown. If I wouldn't have seasoned this, and there would have been no pepper or whatever looks there, it kind of looks gross. But you got to just leave that, accept that, because once you sear it, it's going to look great. So I'm going to take that. Now, let's say I'm not in a hurry or I'm not ready. Staci said, wait a minute, don't cook yet. I'm still doing something else. I can let this rest let it rest for up to an hour. It's usually about a half an hour, but what I'll do is I'll take it and I'll take a piece of butcher paper, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too when we get to the ribs. But you can get a roll. If you're a griller, I think everybody should have a roll of brown butcher paper. You can get it off Amazon. I think this is about 20 bucks. And it is not a lifetime supply, but it'll last you for a couple of years unless you cook a lot. Now, the difference between this butcher paper and what you get at a butcher shop or a deli counter or a meat counter is this does not have wax on either side. What you'll get if you go to Whole Foods or Heinen's and they wrap your steak in some brown paper like this, it has a coating on one side so it doesn't leak. That doesn't allow any of the smoky taste or anything to get through. So that's not, I've been told, not what you use when you're cooking. So I'll take that and I'll wrap it and cover it until I'm ready to finish it. And so I'll wrap it up and then I'll take a kitchen towel and I'll wrap that again, and just to keep it warm. I'm not worried about keeping it really warm, but it's just kind of. And that can sit for 30 to 60 minutes. And then when I'm ready, and that's what I'm waiting. I'm going to show you, just get quick. If you're ready to go from smoking it to bringing up the temperature right to the grill, I'm going to have my probe in it. I'm going to pull it off 116, 117, 118-ish. I'm going to put some butter on it. I like it because it makes better grill marks. When you see the picture coming up, I like nice dark grill marks. And a little bit of butter helps to do that when I'm only going to throw this on a pan for a minute and a half or so. If you reverse the butter, you can just put it on dry, because what I've read, and I always use butter, but they say when you do that salt dry brining, that brine also creates a little coating so that it helps to crispen up and make a better grilling output or effect. But again, I've never done that. So I'm going to get my grill. Now this is where I'm going to need when I'm doing it outside, I have an inside thing that doesn't require your grill, so bear with me. But I have a gas grill I'm going to get it as hot as I can. I have a cast iron pan. This is a new one I got recently. It's got a griddle side, and just bear with me on that, Rust. I just washed this. That'll come off with olive oil real easy. And I have a grill side. And I'm going to put this on, and I'll let that heat up probably 15 or 20 minutes. And this gas grill, this picture just shows about 600 degrees, but that's Staci's grill that she's had for 20 years. It'll still peg that thermometer. I'll get that to 700 degrees. And so it gets that pan super, super hot. And so I'll put the steak down and I'll cook it for about 1 minute, maybe a minute and a half. No, let's say a minute. And then I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to turn it 90 degrees. So when I turn it over, you're going to see I've got grill marks going in both directions. So maybe 1 minute, and then turn it 90 degrees for no more than a minute. Then I'll turn it over. That's what it looks like. That look good? You can nod. That just took a minute, no more than 2 minutes to do that. And so now I will leave it this side. I don't turn it anymore because I don't need the grill marks to be on both sides. But depending on how you like your steak, I like my medium rare. So I pull it at that 117, 118 by cooking it for a minute, then turning it a minute, flipping it over. Now I'll just touch it. I don't bother with the thermometer at this point. I'm just going for the touch test just to see how springy it is. But if you want it more medium, just leave that on for an extra minute or two. And so that's what you're going to experiment with. And now some people say never cut a steak early. If you're not sure, is it done enough? I don't want it too much, or I want it more. I don't want it too rare. Right here at this point, if you cut it in half and just spread it open, you can get a peek at the inside and you're not going to lose all the juices. Don't worry about that. So then I'm going to pull it off, and now I'm going to put it on my favorite cutting board, my concave cutting board, cut it in half. And this particular picture that I pulled, that's a little closer to medium. Oops. I'm going to go back and show you what that ribeye that we had wrapped that was sitting and waiting for 30 or 60 minutes. I'll throw that on for the same amount of time, just a minute, turn it a minute, flip it over, and then I'll cut it. And that's a perfect medium rare to me. So what you'll do is just figure out the timing, how long. And I always say, especially when I have guests, I'm going to pull things early because I can't uncook anything. So if I plop it down on the tray and you look at it and go, ooh, it's bloody, my grill's still hot, we're going to go put it back on. So I like to pull a little early. Let me back up a couple things. So this concave cutting board, if you don't have one and you do a lot of slicing of meat with a lot of juice on it, I would highly recommend that you find one. You can buy it on Amazon. This is a really, really nice cutting board. And I think it costs only like $50. And it's concave. So this sits in a little trough. So you can put the juiciest steak on there and slice it, and there's no juice running off on your counter in the kitchen. It was a gift from my sister. It's probably the best gift she's ever given me in 50 years of her giving me gifts. She didn't like me when I was really little. She didn't start giving me gifts till I was 12. So that is a reverse seared ribeye on a smoker. Questions so far? Anybody? Anybody done that? All right. So before I go on to the oven and sous vide, just quickly, if you'd like a topping, so every once in a while I like to do a black and blue ribeye. So I'll take some butter and either blue cheese or feta cheese or whatever crumble cheese you can get. I'll put some butter in a bowl. I'll melt it, and then I'll put the cheese in it and melt that and get a gooey gob of buttery cheese, and I'll put it on top of that steak. And that's one of my favorite ways to have a ribeye, black and blue. I don't do it often because I don't eat that much cheese, but that's a way to really juice up a steak. And here's another cut of just another steak I had. One thing you notice, notice, when you reverse sear, the outside's nice and crisp and it goes immediately to pink. So there's not this gradual change of color. When I cook a steak on a grill, normally, if I want that center to be, if I want that center to be pink, from the outside, it's going to be the outside's more medium color, medium well, and it goes brown to tan to pink. So that is pink all the way to the edge. So it's just a more flavorful steak, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the sous vide and oven, unless anybody has any questions.
No, that steak is beautiful.
Oh, thanks. I was waiting for some feedback. Everybody's just sitting there. I love it. All
Yeah.
right. So now sous vide in an oven. I'm going to cook it in an oven. It's the same idea. I'm going to throw it in at 225, just like I would in the smoker. So I don't have a picture of the steak in, but just pretend. And what I would do is I would put it on one of these the cooling tray. You can buy them at Target for $5. It just allows the air to be all the way around the steak. It's like putting it on a grate on a grill. And I'm going to put a temperature probe in there too. And I'm going to pull it at the same. And it's going to look, again, similar. It's not going to look really appealing when you pull it out of the oven. But once you sear it, it's going to look good. So the sous vide, I'm going to talk about finishing them both after the sous vide. If you haven't done it, it's a device that you put in water and it brings the water up to a certain temperature. So I'm going to fill this tub and I'm going to turn the sous vide unit to a certain temperature. I'm going to bring it up. When I sous vide, I go to 128. Okay, I don't cook it at 117 or 118 like I do on the grill or in the oven. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes. But I'm going to set that. I'm going to get that ready and I'm going to set it at 128. I'm going to take a food sealer bag, a food saver bag, and I'm going to put that steak in it. And I'm going to vacuum seal it. So again, we'll go think back when I was preparing the steak. I had dry brined it and I seasoned it, and now it's going to go in this food saver. So it's airtight. It doesn't have to be. If you don't need a food saver, you can put it in a Ziploc bag. Just make sure that it's sealed and you try to get most of the air out of it. Otherwise, the steak's going to float. You need to have something to weight it down so that it's not floating at the top of the water. And so I'm going to put that in. Bear with me, I don't have a picture of that going in, but later when I show you the ribs, you'll see how it floats in and submerges in the water. And I'm just going to leave it in there and I'm going to cook it. Hang on, my notes. I'm going to cook that in the sous vide for 2 to 4 hours. And so remember, because the water temperature is 128, it's never going to overcook. So 2 hours is about the minimum. I like 3 to 4, and you can go longer. So if you go longer, it's just going to tenderize the meat even more. And so with a good ribeye or a good strip steak, 4 hours is as long as you need. But if you're using a cheaper cut of meat, let's just say it's a sirloin steak or a chuck eye steak or whatever, if you can cook it for 12 or 14 hours, then it's going to make that steak way more tender than it would if you just cooked it quickly. So when it comes out of the bag, again, that doesn't look all that appealing, does it? Just kind of brown. It doesn't, it just, you would not sit down and serve that to somebody. But I'm going to take the same idea of searing it on the outside grill. I put a little bit of butter on it. You might want to put a little garlic powder on it, whatever you like. And here's an example of what they look like. The one on the left is not as appealing as the one on the right, but I'm going to take a pan. So now I don't need, if you don't have a hot grill, you can take a grill pan inside, either on your stovetop, or I do it in an induction pan and a heater that I have in the garage, because if I do this in the house, it really smokes it up, and Staci she's not very happy with me because I stink up the house. So I take that out, get that pan super hot, and it's the same idea. 1 minute, I turn it 90 degrees, I cook it for another minute, I flip it over, I finish it off, and it's done, and it looks like that. And if I cooked that for you and put it in front of you and you didn't see how I did it, you would never, ever guess that it came out of a bag that was in boiling water for 4 hours. So it's super easy. Timing is simple. Again, you can leave it in if you're at the 3 hour point and you're not ready, you just let it go for another hour, you're fine. And there's another look at what it's like. And another one.
I had to walk away for 10 seconds. Did you season the steak before you put it in the vacuum seal bag?
Yes, so if you back up to before I went on to the smoke.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I dry brine it.
Yeah,
then
okay.
Whatever seasoning you want, I do that right before. And sometimes I don't have to. Sometimes I'll season it afterwards as I'm eating it. But I don't do much more than salt. It's got the dry brine, so I don't put any more salt on it. I'll just use pepper and a little bit of garlic powder, onion powder once in a while.
Yeah. So really your prep is the same. It's just the method is you sous vide it or you reverse grilled it.
Yes. So I know why there was this. I'm sorry. Let me back up a little bit. One of these was out of the oven and one of these was in the sous vide. So again, when you pull it out of the oven, it's not going to look all that appealing, but you're going to finish it the same way as we did the sous vide. You're going to have that in your oven at 225, but this time you need to have a temperature probe or at least check it with a fast acting probe to make sure it doesn't go over that 118, 117, 118, or you're going to overcook it. And so I can't tell you the timing because your oven might be a little different than mine. But a rough guess, if you put the steak in at 185 to 200, it's going to take upwards of 90 minutes or so to come up to temperature. If you put it in at 225, it's probably going to be about an hour. But you want to, in the oven, you want to be monitoring that and pulling it, just like we did off the grill. Now, if you wanted to rest that, also, if you weren't ready to put it on the hot grill pan, just wrap it up and wait. But the nice part about the sous vide is you just let it sit in there. You don't have to pull it out. You don't have to wrap it. You just leave it in. And so the oven method and the sous vide method, the finish is the same way. On a hot grill pan, couple minutes one side, couple minutes, another minute on the other, get it out, open it up, and go. And another benefit, I think, of any of these three methods is that you don't need to sit and let the steak rest for 5 or 10 minutes before you eat it. You can slice that right off that hot grill pan and eat it because all the juices have been kind of evenly distributed during all that slow cook. And a lot of chefs will tell you that if you cook a steak on a grill hot and you set it, you should let it sit for 5 or so minutes just so that the juices can kind of even out in the steak. But I've never needed to do that when I reverse sear. So questions before we go off on the beef ribs on a smoker? Good. All right. So start off, these are baby back ribs, but I also love St. Louis style ribs. I just get whatever looks good and whatever's available at the store I'm in at the time. First step in prep, and this again, we're gonna do these on a grill. We're gonna do these on in the oven, and we're gonna do these in a sous vide. The prep is identical. First step you want to do, if you're able to, is get the membrane off the back of the ribs. And this can be tricky. This is not something that cooks down. It's not like some of the connective tissue in the ribs that soften up as you cook them. This layer should go if you can. And it's kind of an art. You get better at it. But if you take a knife, like you see in the side of the picture, and you dig it in under one side of that thin layer, don't try to pull it off with your fingers. You're not going to be able to grab it. Just take a paper towel and grab and take one end and just tear it, and it'll just peel right off. There are some ribs like this rack that I did. These pictures are from last weekend. I did this for fresh pictures in the sous vide. These membranes came right off of it. I didn't have much trouble. But there have been times in the past where it's a real fight. It's just like you're picking little pieces off. And I've read from a chef that I follow is don't get obsessed about this. Like if you spend a few minutes trying to get that off, they'll be less chewy on the backside of your ribs. But if it's a struggle, don't worry about it. Don't obsess about getting the membrane off. So what I do is I like to use mustard. Again, we're going to prepare this for same with all three methods. I'll take mustard and I'll smear it on the top. It just helps me have it's a binding agent, helps the spices to stick. And I'm going to add my favorite seasonings, whatever. I don't have any magic. I have things that I like, but whatever rubs or seasonings that you like on your ribs, and you want to coat them both sides. I don't have a picture of both sides, but do the back side and the front side, and the edges. And so that's what it looks like before it's going to go on the smoker. And that's what it's going to look like when it's done. I cook it at 225 for 5 to 6 hours. And so I go for competition style ribs. And this is a picture of one that's no wrap. I'm going to show you how to wrap them. It's a very common or a very popular method called 3-2-1 ribs. And so you wrap them in the middle. This, I just put them on about every, I don't know, 30 to 60 minutes. I might baste them. I don't put any sauce on. Ours, I do dry rub ribs, but if you'd like sauce, you typically do that near the end. Sometimes I'll take a beer, like a Guinness or a thicker, heavier beer, and I'll just coat it with a brush every hour or so. And it gives me something to sip on. I'm not a big beer drinker, so I'll sip the other half of the Guinness. Root beer also works well. It's got some sugar in it, so it's going to caramelize and give a nice little coat to it. So if you're not averse to the sugar, I've heard even people use Coca-Cola, but I'm not a Coca-Cola fan, so forget that I said that. If you want to do the 3-2-1 wrap method, after about 3 hours, you pull it off you pull the ribs, and then I take a big piece of the butcher paper and you can just wrap that. I like to have a bed of onions underneath, so I'll take a whole white onion, I'll slice it up, I'll put a little bit of my dry rub on it, and I'm going to put it back on the grill for about 2 hours. So I take that rack of ribs, lay them on the onions, then I wrap it up, and it goes back on the grill for about 2 hours. You can see I've got a couple of sweet potatoes that are going along for the ride. After about 2 hours, I'm going to open those up. And what this does is it makes the ribs a little more moist. So sometimes they'll dry out if you just leave them on the grate, especially if you don't baste them every half hour. So this kind of moistens them back up. And then I save those onions. It's a really good little thing to have on the side of your plate. I'll take the ribs out, I'll put them back on the rack, and I'll cook them for about an hour or so. And I'll let those onions continue to stay warm in the grill with it. And so if you like saucy ribs, now is the time to put that sauce on if that's your thing. And so that's what it's going to look like. And sometimes I'll smoke wings as well. My ribs take 5 or 6 hours. My wings only take 90 minutes to maybe 2 hours. So I can get the first half of the ribs going and then I get the wings on. And that's what it looks like when I pull it off. Slice them up. So I got a little dish of the onions to go as a side, little garnish. And there's another picture with the sweet potatoes sliced up. All right. Before we go on to the oven method and the sous vide, this is the last piece. Any questions so far?
So you didn't do that salt brine thing for the ribs then?
For the ribs, no, I don't. That's a steak thing. Maybe people do. I never learned that. The one guy that I follow for most of my stuff, his rib recipe I follow, and he doesn't brine them. What some people will do, Mark, is you put any kind of dry rub on it. Some people like to set that in their refrigerator for a couple hours to get that to soak in, but I typically don't.
I think the mustard does about the same trick as the salt, because it lets it adhere, but the mustard also soaks into it and tenderizes the meat.
Yeah, it keeps a little moisture. Yeah, because there's vinegar in the mustard, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So and I put mustard on a lot of things. I put on my salmon. If you watched my Grill with Bill last November, and a lot of people are like, put mustard, like you would never know. Trust me, you can't taste it. It's just it's a good thing to have on top of stuff.
I was gonna say, you cannot taste the mustard, people that think it's gross, but you cannot taste it at all.
I used to use like a Dijon mustard, a little fancier mustard. It's a waste of it. Just use the cheap yellow mustard, because again, there's no taste that carries along with it. All right, so we're going to start out. Here's the same rack of ribs. Now we're going to do them sous vide and in the oven. So same prep. Going to remove the membrane. This time is different though. Here, same prep, except because I'm not cooking them outside over a wood fire, I'll add a little liquid smoke, just a little bit of flavor. And if you don't do this, I don't think you're going to taste a lot of difference. It's just one of those things I do. And that acts as the binding agent. So I don't put mustard on inside. So I'll put a little bit of liquid smoke. And when I say a little bit, it's probably just a teaspoon. I put it in the center and then I just take my fingers and I kind of get it all over. Some people think liquid smoke isn't that healthy, that there's something in it that's not good for you, so skip it. But look, a tablespoon of that is not going to kill me. So that's what it looks like. Just like it looks just the same as going on the grill, except you don't see the mustard as the binding agent. I'm going to place it in the bag. This is going to be the sous vide version. If you notice, I've got the bag folded over. It was a trick I learned a couple years ago. It helps to keep the edges of the bag dry, so that when you close it and you seal it, there's not moisture in that, because it doesn't seal very well. If I had the bag just open regularly, I'm sticking that in, there's going to be part of my binding agent or the spice that's going to get all over the edge of the bag, and it's going to possibly cause that bag to leak. So just fold it over and roll it down. slide it in, and up you go. So before I close the bag, I put a little bit of this is sugar-free barbecue sauce. It's that, Stacy, what's that guy? It's C. Hughes? Do you remember the brand?
Yes, it is.
It's Hughes. I don't know that it's G. Hughes or it's a guy. He's got his face on it. He makes a whole line of sugar-free stuff, salad dressings and sauces, and he's got a Thai spice sauce. It's excellent. I should have had it down here, but look for that if you like the sugar-free stuff. I'm not
You
a big
see that?
I'm not a big fan of his salad dressing because he uses soybean oil. I wish he used better oil, but and we
Yes,
use
you have.
we use a sugar-free ketchup as well. It's really good. So anyway, I'm going to take that. I'm going to smear all that, spread it around with my fingers. I'm going to seal that bag. Again, if you have a Ziploc bag, it works the same. It's just you're going to have some trouble getting that bag to sink. And now here's going to go in the sous vide unit. I cook it at 165 for 12 hours. And it comes out perfect. If you Google different recipes for sous vide, you're going to see some people like it 145 for 24 hours. Nobody I've seen has cooked it for more higher than 165. Even though on a grill, if you're smoking ribs, you typically get those ribs to close to 200 degrees, and that's when they're really tender. I was surprised when I got the sous vide recipe that said no more than 165. This is the first time I've ever sous vide ribs. I've done them the other way plenty of times. I've done them on a grill. I can't even tell you how many. This is the first time I did it, and I'll tell you, they turned out fabulous. So 12 hours, you can let them go 13 or 14. Again, the timing is not that critical, but I wouldn't do that for 5 or 6 or 7 hours. It's not hot enough, and it's not going to get them tender enough. Now, I'll do putting in the oven. Here's the other side of the rack of ribs. They looked identical when I seasoned them. And so instead of putting them on a regular cookie sheet, because I don't have any air underneath and I don't want to have to worry about turning stuff, I use this same baking, it's a cooling tray, and I set it on one of these pans and stick it in the oven. Looks like that. Set it for 225. Put it in there, close it up, and you're done. I ran this on a convection, it's a convection oven also, so I did it on convection bake. I don't know if it would make a difference, but I figured having a little bit of air circulating in couldn't hurt me.
Thank God my oven was clean.
Yeah. So
Funny you should say that. I was thinking that exact thing.
same cooking time, 5 to 6 hours. When I was cooking that, I was kind of peeking. You know, they always say, if you're looking, you're not cooking. So don't be always opening up your grill and taking a peek at stuff. But I do from time to time, and I do it quick. But after about, I don't know, 3.5 or 4 hours, it just didn't seem like it was cooking. I stuck my probe in, not so much for the temperature, but just to see how tender they were getting. And so I thought they were going a little slow, so I kicked it up to 250. And after that, at the 5.5 hour point, they were perfect. But I don't obsess about the temperature. 225 to 250 is the standard temperature range when you're doing on a smoker or whatever, as long as you keep it in that range. So it's going to affect your cooking time a little, but not a lot because you're cooking slow. So now I took the sous vide ribs out. They're the ones on the right. And the oven baked were on the left. And I put them and I finished them at the same time. I cranked up the broiler. And I just watched it, and they just wanted to crispen them up a little bit, get a little bit of sear on the top. So here you don't need to go outside like I did with the steak or get a grill pan hot to sear them. It just makes them look a little better, and they taste better. It's a little bit crispier. And it was between 4 and 5 minutes, and I moved them around because our gas oven has a broiler, a heating unit right across the top, and it kind of goes out to the sides, and I wanted it to be even, so I just spun it a little bit. So at this point, you're going to want to just experiment, maybe move your ribs around, watch and see. If you like them dark and crispier, leave them in there for 3 or 4 more minutes, but you're certainly not going to leave them in for 20. You'll score them. You'll burn the shit out of them. So I pull them out, put them on my concave pan. The sous vide were on the left, the oven baked were on the right. I cut them up. The ones on the top were the sous vide, the ones on the bottom were the oven. And the ones out of the oven tasted just as good as the ones that come off the grill. They were a little, I don't want to say dry, because they tasted fine. They were really tender, but because I wasn't basting them and I didn't have the mustard as the binding agent, I think it could have softened them up just a little. But if you would have had them, I don't think you would have said these are too tough. They were tender as can be. The sous vide ones were better. They won hands down, no question about it. I was very surprised. So you can do ribs inside in a sous vide in your oven under a broiler, or you could take it if you have a hot grill. You can go and lay those on its back and you can finish those off, but you do not need a grill for those, and those were fantastic. That's it. So questions, I got a bonus if I got time. I got just a couple slides. It'll take 1 minute. I got some pictures of reverse seared lamb chops and reverse seared burgers. It's the only way I cook burgers now. Anybody want to see it?
Yes.
Okay, real quick. So here I got lamb chops, got them from Costco. Best place to get them from me, from farm concerned, is Costco. They're the least expensive. They're nice and thick. They're awesome. I'll typically put garlic powder, some onion powder. I learned from a cook years ago, onion powder seems to tenderize meat. You don't have it's not a taste thing, but it tenderizes it. And so I'll leave garlic powder and onion powder on for a little while. Not onion salt, onion powder. And then that is help me say some drawing a blank. It's rosemary, a diced rosemary. It's a great combination. I put it on the grates and I will put a temperature probe in. You see the one on the left. I'm going to bring that up to about the same as I do a steak, about 125. I'll bring it up a little bit higher. Because they're so thick, I want them to be heated all the way through. So 125, maybe no more than 128. And I'm going to throw them on a hot grill pan, just like I do the steak. Couple minutes per side, flip it over, and that's what they look like. Now they're thick, and I don't cook these that often. So when I flip them, I will take one of them that's about the medium thickness of all of them, and I'll pull it off and I'll cut into it, and I'll just test that. And if it's a little bit too rare, I'll let the rest of them cook. But I like my lamb chops a little more to medium than I will steaks. I don't like a steak that's overcooked, but lamb chops seem to be good, even to medium well. And so that's what they look like when they come off, and they're awesome and very, very easy. Again, the timing is simple because if you pull them off your smoker, or you could do these in the oven too. I've never done them sous vide, not to say you couldn't. It would be the same as a steak. If I pull them off the smoker and I'm not quite ready to put them on the hot pan, I just put them on a plate, wrap them with aluminum foil, put a towel over them, and let them sit until I'm ready. And then burgers, it's the same idea. I'm going to put them on the smoker. I'm going to bring those up to 125 or so, put them on that grill pan and cook them up, and they're awesome. We do sliders more than we do full-size burgers. And when I do sliders, I never even put them on the grill pan. I cook them on the Traeger, and I flip them and I just watch. I'll test the temperature, but you can just see what color they get to. I do them by eye and pull them off, and they're awesome. I never put them on the sear pan. But I won't cook a burger any other way than that. It takes a little longer, but they just taste awesome. And that now is the last of my slides. Stop my share.
So I have a question, Bill. So when you're cooking the hamburgers, you let them cook at 225 for how long?
You gotta until it gets to that the internal temperature of 125.
Okay.
The full size, I'll have the temperature probe in, or let's say I might not have my smoke unit where I'm constantly monitoring. And these things, you can buy fancy ones. They have Wi-Fi connections. This is just a little Bluetooth transmitter, and it'll send me the temperature so I don't have to keep looking. But if you don't have that, you certainly should have, if you're going to be a serious hack cook of any sort, you need a fast acting temperature probe. Now, there's some things you can cook that you can kind of tell, but there are a lot of things you can't. So this is a good investment. If you got a birthday coming up, sorry, Christmas is past, tell somebody to go on this and get you a TheraPen. Get the name wrong. I say it all the time. It's a ThermoPen. They have their original, which this is, and they go on sale all the time. I think you get this now for like $55 or $60. It goes on sale because they've come out with a ThermoPen 1, which they say is faster acting, and now that's the higher priced one. I bought one for myself because I figured, well, I just need the best one, and I tested it, and it's no faster than this one. So the $100 one is no better than the $60 one. I actually returned it. They gave me my money back. I said it's just not any better than the one I had. So, but I highly recommend this over some $15 or $20 one that you'd find in a like a Target or Walmart. So Bob, you would take that, stick it in 125-ish. So again, so if I'm not in a hurry, I like to cook things as slow as possible. So I'll cook it at 185. But if I'm in a little bit of a hurry, I'll cook it up to 225, maybe sometimes 250. Because I don't think that hamburger meat, especially, is going to get much more flavor imparted in it from smoking slower. It's not going to tenderize it anymore like a steak would.
I don't do the cooking of the meat, that kind of meat, but when I worked at Yours Truly,
You manage it, truly.
a moon or two ago, if this is medium rare, right? Or if you touch this part of your hand, that's what a medium rare feels like. So then, yeah, this goes to medium. Maybe this is medium, but if that's,
It's just a baby. Down here is rare, then medium rare, then medium, and then
that's my medium rare.
the more it goes down. But that doesn't work on hamburgers very well. It works well on steaks.
I stay out of his way, he stays out of my way. You keep cooking.
Yeah, you know what? I use one of these. So, questions, comments? And it could be a question on any other kind of meat or grilling. It doesn't have to be on just what I covered.
Have you ever sous vide chicken?
Mhm.
Do that a lot. We just got a sous vide for Christmas, so
Yeah, you know what? Here's the value of sous vide, and my favorite thing to cook in sous vide is pork tenderloin. Chicken breasts are okay, but typically they don't look as, I like to get them out and I'll throw them in a pan to kind of brown them up a little bit because they're just a little white and they're just not that appealing. But the benefit is, let's say you take a chicken breast and it's a big one and it's fat on this end and it's thin on this end. When you pull it out, if you're cooking it to 165, the entire chicken breast is 165. Whereas if you cook that fat chicken breast on a grill and you pull it when the fat end is at 165, your thin end is at 180 or 190. So you got different levels of doneness. But we pound our chicken breast, so I don't have that issue on a grill. They always come out the same. Pork tenderloin, I've never been able to just get it right. There'll be the rare end, the medium rare end, and then kind of medium, and then the other end is kind of dried out. When you cook it in sous vide, it's perfect. From the little tip at the end to the fattest tip, it's exactly the same temperature. And I don't need to, I know when I pull a pork tenderloin out, I don't need to brown it. When I slice it, it looks totally fine to me. It's my favorite thing to sous vide. But now the ribs from last weekend may have moved up one notch above it, but I never cook a pork tenderloin in an oven or on a grill. It's a sous vide. It's worth it.
good to know.
But you'll like the chicken. Just, you might not like the look of it.
It took me a long time to get over that we were eating boiled meat. But once I got over that, it was good.
I mean, that's
Because it is better.
because every time she said it, it's like, Staci, we're not boiling. It's not in the water. It's being heated by the water. So I've done beef jerky that way, or I make my own roast beef instead of buying deli roast beef. You get a nice eye around and season it up and put it in sous vide that. And you can, it's great. And you don't have any of the additives that they put in for deli meat. Here's one of the warnings, and I don't know, maybe somebody here does. It's more of a medical concern. Bacteria wise, they say that you shouldn't cook meat in a sous vide under 131 degrees for more than, I forget, like 4, 5, 6 hours. Like there's some bacteria can form, and you need, if you get an eye around, they say you need, it's a 24 to 48 hour cook to make it really tender. And so if you want your own deli type roast beef without being deli meat, you gotta, the longer you cook it, the better. And so I've read that once and it just scared me. It's like I cook it at 131, but I like rarer roast beef. I'd like it at 125, but I haven't done it because of the bacteria concerns. The rind, I don't know if you learned any of that in med school, but
No, I'm not sure about that.
gotcha. So it's a word of caution that I picked up, but try that, Jay. You can make some pretty good roast beef at home.
Okay.
And I've done beef jerky that way too.
It's gonna get a lot of use.
And here I show you I don't know if you got a lid.
Good Christmas present, Joe.
You're just cooking 3, 4, 5 hours. It's okay. That 12-hour sous vide, I have a lid. It just keeps the water from evaporating that quickly. If you're gonna do something for, let's say that roast beef for 24 to 36 hours, the water will go low and there's a high marker and a low marker on the sous vide unit. So if it gets too low, it shuts off. So it doesn't burn your house down, I guess. So if you're going to do anything in that over 8 hours, watch the water level because it will go down. When I did that sous vide last weekend, I started it before we went to bed. When we got up in the morning, I went and I just added water. But if you go longer, you will run out. So what's the first thing you're gonna cook, Jamie?
You're muted.
You're muted. Ask to unmute. The reason I asked Jamie is he's told me on numerous occasions he doesn't have a lot of different recipes in his arsenal, but he'd like to cook more. So hopefully I gave you a couple ideas.
I laugh that we've been doing this for 4 years, Zoom stuff now. And we still can't figure it out.
You know, when I'm used to using my computer and my green screen and all this. When I go my phone or if I go to my iPad, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. So
It's so funny. I do Zoom family meetings all the time and they're like, I don't get it. I don't know how to turn it on.
all right, so we just went over the hour mark. So thanks for being patient and listening. And hopefully you'll learn things. Hopefully you're gonna try something new. And if you're not sure about stuff, don't be afraid. A lot of people are just afraid to cook. They're afraid to try stuff. I mean, worst that's gonna happen. It's not gonna turn out well. But you'll learn.
Our next cooking class is gonna be live on a Thursday night. And I don't know what I'm teaching you, but it's gonna be live, so we're gonna actually go somewhere, but like meal prep. I'm figuring it out, but that'll be in February.
So ideas for you to give other people when you have a birthday coming up. You want a fast acting thermometer. You want one of those concave cutting boards. Like if Staci was gonna throw out anything in the kitchen, that would be the last thing I would let her throw out. Maybe that and there and the couple of knives. All right. You guys have a great night. If you have any questions, feel free to email me.
You're gonna send out this link too.
The link, yeah, I'm gonna run the recording. I'll post it up on YouTube. So if you want to rewatch it for any details or just shoot me an email or question. And then we'll send the link to a couple people and then we're gonna draw it tomorrow and we'll announce the winner. I'm gonna send an email to all of you with that link and I'll let you know who won. Okay. So have a great Thursday night. We'll see some of you at the gym tomorrow. And remember, we got the rowing clinic on Saturday. Is a doozy of a partner workout. So don't miss Saturday if you can help it.
he didn't breathe. There's a workout and there's a rowing clinic. There's two separate things.
Oh, yeah. And the holiday party, everybody's welcome. Jay,
Jay, I think you guys
You're
should come to the
welcome.
holiday party.
bring your kids.
Is Joan still
Saturday?
sitting there? Yeah.
Yeah,
You're going to Purdue, aren't you?
I gotta drop my son off at school.
Oh,
Oh, you're always out. Or, well, if you get back in time with 2 to 5.
All right.
Saturday, 2 to 5 Bay Lanes. Same
Okay,
stories. You're familiar.
yep.
All right. Happy
Good.
Thursday, everybody. Thanks for joining.
bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All
Thanks.
right, thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.